I've done a lot of videos comparing Copics to other alcohol-based markers, but what if we compare them to a marker that's filled with something different? Xylene. Ooh. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome, mad creators, to the underground laboratory where we create robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. And from time to time, we do marker reviews. We're going to do a marker review today, and we're going to draw an alien. So yeah, here's what I'm thinking of. I'm going to draw this guy here, or color this guy. He's already drawn, obviously. So yeah, just another alien. I tend to do a lot of aliens in these marker rendering videos, but yeah, so these, as everyone knows, these are Copic markers. They're like the creme de la creme, the upper echelon of markers, and so we are gonna compare those to other markers, which I've been doing for a while. I've compared, what have I done? So I think I've compared them to Prismacolors, I've compared them to the Artist Lofran, I've compared them to what's the name of that one marker? The Hoo is the Hoo brand, and of course the color changing chameleon markers. But we're going to do something a little different this time. I want to show you this marker. This marker is probably about 20 years old. It kind of matches, doesn't it? So yeah, so I had this marker. These used to be like my absolute favorite markers. This is the Chartpac ad marker or AD marker. I don't know if it's AD or ad, just like I'm always confused whether it's Copics or Copics. Everyone keeps telling me it's Copics, so that's what I've been trying to change my pronunciation to. So anyway, so yeah, so these were like my favorite markers. I used to do marker rendering a long time ago for product illustration and for like marker renderings for architectural spaces and things like that. So I used to do markers a lot, even before, I don't even know if Copics were around back then. But so I would use the old design markers, and I think at that time they also had, what else did they have? They had these, and then they had the Pantone markers, which I think maybe was bought out by Winsor Newton. I think the Winsor Newton kind of have the Pantone markers now. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that. But anyway, so this was always my favorite. And you'll notice it doesn't have the two tips. So what's up with that? So now that they've got these new markers, do these things still stack up? And like I said, these have a totally different formula. This isn't alcohol based, it's xylene based, which I don't really technically know what that is. It sounds like it could be a form of alcohol, but it's called xylene, and I don't know the chemical makeup of it or whatever, but it is a different kind of marker. We'll get a little more into that when we start talking and start doing some of the side-by-side comparison. But I was happy to know or discover that these they still make them. So this is a newer one, and as you can see, the 20-year-old marker and this, which I just picked up probably a month ago, very similar still. So I don't know. So hopefully the formula is still the same, because this is actually like one of my favorite markers. So very similar. The only thing I can tell a little differently is the sticker here. This one's a little longer, but not a big deal. But we're gonna look at this and we're gonna compare it side by side with the Copics, and let's see how they stack up. Okay, so these are the ad markers or AD markers. These are the Copics, and let's kind of compare them. So again, I used to have these. Again, these are markers that I had. They're over 20 years old. I used to use these all the time, my favorite ones. And it's weird because I must have really liked these because I held on to it. When I had some, I used to have Prismacolors and Pantone markers and some design markers. And I think eventually I got rid of all the other ones, but for whatever reason I held on to these, I think because I liked them so much. And I didn't know that they still made them, so when I heard about these, I was like, oh great, yeah, I got to try them out and see if they're as good as I remember, because back then, at least that I'm aware of, in the States they didn't have Copic markers. So these are what I've been using. I mean, I use all kinds of markers, and I don't have a personal preference for markers. Some are better than others, but I use them all interchangeably. When I do an illustration, I just pick whatever colors. and they're all compatible because I always use alcohol-based. Now the add markers are not alcohol-based markers, they are Xylene, so it's a solvent-based marker, and so I'm curious what the difference is, and we're going to try some things out to figure out what that is. But anyway, so very similar to design as in the past, and these still, you know, these still hold up. They still have ink in them. They hold a lot of ink. But so let's take a look. Now, of course, with the Copics, you've got the double nibs. This is only a single nib, so does that mean already Copic wins? Well, we'll see. So here we go. Here's the Chisel Nib. This is a piece of marker paper here. That's the Chisel Nib. You know kind of how that works. And this is what everyone loves, is the brush nib, and that's kind of what people are looking for mostly with markers, is ones that have that brush nib. Not all of them do, especially a lot of the cheaper ones. So the add marker only has one nib, but it's a tri-nib, so it's got it's basically like 3 tips in one. So you can get a nice bold stroke, here's sort of a medium stroke, and then we can get a fine line with that. So it's basically 3 tips in one. And honestly, so because, you know, typically what I use is the brush nib on the Copics. You know, you can get kind of thick to thin lines all in one. So in some ways, you know, it's a little harder to get the broad stroke, but you can do it. You can do it with the Copic. But the add marker, kind of the same thing. So we'll go broad, we'll go thin, we can go, you know, we can just kind of rotate the brush around. So, and it's a softer nib. Like, I did review these. Now this is the Prismacolor, and when I first discovered these, they have a similar tip. It's like a tri-tip. So I know this isn't a review on these, but I just want to kind of show you an example. So you got the broad, medium, fine. So you got the same thing, but these nibs, so I thought, because these are a lot cheaper, so I was thinking, well, maybe these are as good as the old add markers, but the tip on these they're not soft. It's not soft like, and there's also other, you know, sometimes you find the alternative to the Copic markers, you find they have brush nibs, but they're a little harder. They're not as soft and flexible. So that's why I really like these. But the add markers, this tip is super flexible. It's super soft, so it's almost like you're working with a brush tip anymore. So you don't really need the dual tip. So all you really need for these is that tip, and it's fine. So really cool. So I want to show you, so we're talking about, again, these are alcohol, these are Xylene solvent. So what's the difference? Why choose one over the other? Now the first difference is these have a little more of an odor. So if you're super sensitive to that, you're gonna notice that. All right. Copic's not so much. So that's one thing. And we'll get into the pros and cons and the big comparisons when we get into the actual illustration. But I want to show you some things real quick. Hold on a second. So a lot of times I will, this is marker paper, but a lot of times I'll do illustrations over like photocopies. So this is a photocopy. Now this is from like you would get at a print shop. So this is like a laser print. This here is an inkjet, which usually you print it like on your home computer or whatever. So here's the big difference. So we're gonna see how, again, this is what you would print on your home computer usually, a laser jet. This is the, well, let me get gray since these robots are gray. Let me find the gray. Okay. All right, here we go. So I'm gonna take this little Iron Giant. Now this is the add marker. This, again, I'm just gonna kind of go over it. It's not smudging at all. So if you're working off of a desktop printer like an inkjet, these don't smudge at all. Now let's try that with the Copics. Now I'm not seeing, it's weird because I'm not seeing the smudging here, but I have noticed that before. So, you know, maybe you can get lucky, but I've noticed, and maybe it's with the smaller color or the lighter colors like yellow or whatever. But so I was expecting them to bleed because I have had bleeding on inkjets before. But now let's try This is like what you get from like an office copy machine, or like if you go to like Office Max or Staples or something like that. Now it's weird because, okay, here we go. You see how it's almost disappearing. So the solvent pretty much gets rid of that, the photocopy. Now the illustrations I'm going to be working on are photocopy. So I mean, I went over it a number of times. So you can, if you're careful, you can be safe and it's not going to smudge too much. But the cool thing about this, now this is a thicker paper, so I can't do it with this, and I don't have a colorless blender. But if you have a colorless blender, you can take and you can flip an image from like a laser printer, flip it over, take like your colorless blender, the add marker, and go like that, and it will transfer the paper, or it will transfer the image onto another paper. So that's kind of a cool effect. And then again, just for comparison's sakes, this shouldn't smudge at all with the Copics. So again, that could be a drawback or it could be a plus if you want to do some transferring or whatever. But in summary, so the solvent base, the Xylene, work better over like inkjet, whereas the alcohol work better over like a laser printer. So now again, for comparison, a lot of people aren't working off of photocopies. They're working off of you know, multi-liners or whatever. So this right here is this line is made with this Fude pen, and these smaller lines are made with a micron. So a lot of people use these tools for their illustrations. So let's just see how they hold up if they smudge. Here's the Copic. Now, in any case, whatever you're doing, you gotta let them dry. You gotta give them time to dry, or they both will smudge. So I'm not getting any smudging with that. And I'm not getting any smudging with that. So if you're, you know, and here we'll go again with the, there we go. So neither of them really smudge as long as you give it time to dry. So pretty cool. So I'm really happy about these. The other thing I want to again take a look just at the marker itself. In comparison, we talked about the different nibs. There are some other things. They're designed, these aren't designed to roll. Neither are these, they're round, but they've kind of got a, you can kind of see how that tip is set up. So, so there's other things here. With the Copics, they don't, you can't put the caps on the end. I do not like that. These ones. Oh, what did I do? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so they will fit on the ends. So things like that. I've mentioned before, I'm not crazy about stickers so much, because sometimes over time they can fade. But again, these are super old and the stickers have hold on. They've got both the name of the marker. This is a chartreuse, and it's got a number, and then also the color and the tip, same thing. Copics also, just on here, they have the number and the name, so both colors here. So I don't know, I think these are almost, and the colors on pretty much all markers, it's kind of iffy whether how closely the colors match, but they're pretty close from the tip color and the color you get on the marker on both of these brands. So yeah, so based on that, let's take two side-by-side illustrations and we'll see how they hold up next to each other. Okay, so here I have two of the same alien illustrations that I'm going to use. On the left you're going to see the add markers, and on the right will be the Copic. And let's kind of see what the colors look like. Are they as vibrant, as vivid, are they as bold? So we're going to kind of compare those. So I try to match the colors as closely as I could. I picked those out, and we'll kind of see how they look like and how different these are, because, you know, no matter what kind of the process, well, the process is one thing. I mean, you want the process of creating the illustration to go smoothly. As far as, you know, the way the brush tips work, or this tri-nib works, you don't want it to be difficult. But in the end, you also want the final product to look good. So let's see how each one looks, and we'll talk a little bit about the differences between these two markers. So again, the major difference is the AD or the AD markers are a solvent base, Xylene. Copics, as well as a lot of other popular markers, are alcohol-based. So these are a little bit different. Okay, so let's get into some of the stats, the pros and cons, and things like that. Now, as far as the number of colors, kind of Copic is the runaway video. I mean, the runaway video, the runaway winner. I don't know why I said that. The runaway winner. So Copic comes in 358 different colors. The ad markers, they only come in 138. Now, in working with these markers, take into consideration that as far as blending, the Xylene markers, they blend better than Copics. That's hands down. So you can create pretty much whatever color you want with the Xylene. So that's something to consider, even though they don't have as many colors. And of course, the more colors, the more expensive they are. So if you can get as many blending choices from less markers, that could be a plus too. So I'll let you guys kind of weigh that. Now here's, the price is also a big factor. Now, both of these aren't super cheap markers, but the ad markers are less expensive. So, you know, prices vary. But so I just went to one store that's carried both of them and kind of compared, so that will kind of give you a good comparison. Because sometimes Copics can be up to like $8 a marker. But so I'm going off of Dick Blick's website. They sell both Copic and ad markers. They're selling the ad markers for approximately around $3.50, whereas the Copics sell for about $5.50. So about $2 cheaper for the ad markers. Now, another thing we want to look into are the nibs. Are they replaceable? Both the markers do have replaceable nibs, so you can switch those out. Another major thing to consider when you're buying markers, especially when you're buying these expensive markers, are they refillable? And unfortunately, the ad markers are not refillable. So you would have, when you're done with it, you just have to buy a new marker. They don't have the refills. Copics are refillable. You can buy the refill packs, and you do save quite a bit of money. The amount you can get out of a refill compared to just buying a marker. I mean, the refills are, I don't know if they're twice as much, but you can get probably maybe 5 or 6, I'm not exactly sure, but refills out of them. So that is something to consider. Now, the other thing in comparison, the amount of ink that they hold, the Copics don't hold as much ink as the ad markers. The ad markers hold a lot of ink, all right? So that's something to consider too. So they're not going to go down as much, all right? They both have Colorless Blender, and like I said, the cool thing about the ad marker Colorless Blender is that you can take that and you can make transfers. If you take like a photocopy on like just a regular sheet of paper, it's regular weight that you would normally get, you put that down, go over it, and you can transfer it on. So that kind of can create some cool effects and everything. Whether that's sort of gimmicky or not, I'll leave that up to you guys. But they both have Colorless Blender. But I think that the ad markers blend quite a bit better than the Copics. Not that Copics don't blend well, because they do. I mean, they're what everyone kind of strives to be. All right. Now, here's some other things. These are for some people they're minor things, but do the caps fit on the end of the markers? Because when you're illustrating, it's nice to pop that cap at the end so that you don't lose it. Copics, that isn't the case. I thought that they changed that because I thought I had an older set of Copics, and I know for a fact my caps will not fit at the end of my markers, my Copic markers, but I went to get some replacements, some newer markers, and they still wouldn't fit. So they will not fit on the end of the Copic markers, but you can, as you can see in the picture, I've got the cap on the back, so I'm not going to lose that. So that's, you know, that's important for some people. Also, do they roll? Now, the shape of the Copic markers is sort of oblong shaped, kind of an oval shaped, if you look at it from top down. So they're not going to roll. So if you have like a drafting table, well, I mean, I guess it depends on how steep it is, but typically they're not going to roll off. Now, when you look at the ad markers, they're round, so are they going to roll? Well, the thing is, the cap has a different shape to it, so they will not roll unless, again, if it's super steep. So they both shouldn't roll off the table. What else? Another thing that's one of the drawbacks to the solvent-based markers, like the ad markers, is they do have a scent to them. To me, it doesn't really bother me as much, as I've mentioned before. I'm going back to the old days where I used to use these things called design markers, and they were so pungent. I mean, it was, you just did not want to use them in a area that wasn't well ventilated. These aren't quite as bad. I remember when I first started using these, I'm like, oh man, these aren't super strong scented at all, so that's good. But they do have a bit of a scent to them. So if you're super sensitive to that, or if you just don't like that or whatever, then you may not want to get the ad markers. And you know, if you find them, I know not a lot of stores carry them. A lot of people have to get them online. There are stores in my area that have them, but if you find one in a store, just open the cap and you know, don't hold it right up to your nose, but you know, just get an idea of the scent before you buy it, if that's the case, or if you can, just buy one or two, and then if it's too strong, don't, you know, then you're not going to want to get those. So that is a thing. So the ad markers have a strong scent, and the Copic markers have a more of a milder scent. Again, as far as blending, I would definitely, you know, they're both A's in my opinion. But I would say that the Copic markers are probably about an A-, where the blending for the ad markers are probably an A+. So they really do blend a lot better. That solvent just is amazing, and you can blend with, you know, if you put on a separate sheet like an acetate, just put some of the colors on each one. You can take that Colorless Blender or another marker and blend it on the acetate, then bring it over on your illustration. You can get a really nice look and get some graduated tones and everything. As far as smudging, as you kind of saw before, we tried it on both like a photocopy and an inkjet. You know, you can, if you're careful, you can get away with no smudging on both for either markers, but as a general rule, the ad markers are going to work better on like a laser print, and the Copic markers are going to work better on a no, or did I say that right? Did I say that right? Let's see. So the ad markers will probably smudge a little on a photocopy, and the Copic markers shouldn't smudge on a photocopy, whereas on an inkjet, they won't. The ad markers will not smudge, and on a inkjet, that the Copics may smudge. Although we didn't get much smudging, but it's usually with like I said, the yellows and the lighter tones. Those I notice have the most smudging. So if you are working off of photocopies or inkjet, that's something to consider. They both have a similar like color and numbering system. So as far as the ad markers, they've got a color on the top and kind of a band. They're fairly accurate, but none of these markers are super accurate to the color you're actually going to be working with. And that seems to be the case across the board. But so they'll have a name, like for instance, an ad marker will have a name like brick red, but they'll also have a number. So if you choose to, you know, go off of numbers, I'm not exactly sure. The numbering system on the ad marker seems to be, I'm not sure how it works. It just looks, to me, it just looks like a number, whereas on a Copic marker, for instance, I'm looking at one that says YG17, and the YG stands for yellow green 17. So their numbering system seems to be a little easier to follow on the Copics, but they both have that number and a color. So the YG17 is also a grass green. So those are some of the things. You know, they both, obviously the alcohol-based markers, the Copics are compatible with other alcohol-based markers, but the solvent-based markers, the ad markers, are also compatible with other alcohol-based markers, so that's good. Now, the markers that I'm showing you, there are another brand of ad markers. They're called Spectra, not to be confused with Spectrum Noir, which I'll probably do a review on soon. But the Spectra ad markers do have kind of the dual tip, the brush tip on one side and the chisel tip on the other. But maybe I will review those too. But
yeah, all in all, you know, they're both really great markers, but I'm kind of partial to the ad markers. I think they're just a great marker.
All right, here's the end results. We got the ad or AD markers and the Copics. I mean, they're pretty much indistinguishable. So, I mean, out of all of the marker comparisons I think I've done, I think these are the closest match as far as colors go and everything, as far as how well they go on, and as far as quality. I mean, you know, Copic is kind of the, you know, that's what everyone's striving to be, but these guys have been around for a while. It's a little different thing. There are, like I mentioned, there are a few drawbacks. Some people might not like the scent or whatever. To me, it's not super strong compared to some of the older markers that I used to deal with. But as far as the way they lay on and the way they blend, I think, you know, for me personally, I gotta go with the ad markers. Now, probably not as many colors and stuff, so there are definitely pluses to each, but you know, if it just comes down to the markers themselves, how they go on, how they work, and kind of the tip, because like I said, with the ad marker, you kind of have that brush tip feel for the most part. It might take a little getting used to, but you can also use that chisel, all in the same thing, and they hold a lot of ink. Not refillable, that's, you know, but we went through all that stuff. So anyway, so here's the end results. I'll leave it up to you guys. What do you think? You know, maybe you want to try out the ad markers, and there will be links to both Copic and ad markers in the description. They're affiliate links, so they help out the channel. Doesn't cost anything extra or anything like that, so you can click on those if you're interested in getting any of those. So yeah, another marker side-by-side comparison down, and this, like I said, as far as quality-wise, these two are top of the line. So you know, check them out. And with that, I will see you guys later, and that is all.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me here in the Art Lab. There's a lot of other great content on the channel, so click that subscribe button and you won't miss a thing. If you're an aspiring evil genius, visit Serkworks.com for all your mad science supply needs. And if you want to contact me, hit me up in the comments section or follow me on social media. I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you then.